I'm impressed that the HBO Sky One folk horror miniseries The Third Day managed to convince everyone, myself included, that it's a weird and innovative masterstroke of true artistry, while simultaneously trotting out an incredibly familiar tried and tested formula that's hard to take all that seriously by this point. Outsider enters small and isolated rural community and feels unnerved and out of place as they come into contact with said small community's weird and creepy cult-like rituals. It might just be me here, but I can only ever find this formula funny by this point, given that I have entire episodes of League of Gentlemen burnt into my brain. But also this formula is most well known by people on the internet as the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man, one of the most unintentionally hilarious horror movies ever made. I was kind of imagining this show ending with Jude Law screaming, "Not the beast!" That being said though, bits of media that have used this formula have always induced laughs, nervous or otherwise. People often forget that the original Wicker Man was itself quite a funny film, and it was funny on purpose. It has dark jokes in it, and the whole point of it is the islanders reveling in rubbing their uninhibited sexuality in the face of this holier-than-thou virgin who stumbled into their community with no idea what he's doing. Go watch the original Wicker Man if you've never seen it, by the way, it's a good movie. There's all these bits where you see some tits, and you can actually see them doing it and everything. Bits of The Third Day can be more funny than scary, but the main reaction that it goes for is harrowing, and it mostly succeeds. Anyway, so the series is separated into 3 halves. Oh shit, wait. The series is separated into 3 parts, summer, autumn and winter, but we're going to focus on summer and winter now for reasons that will become obvious later. The opening 3 episodes are summer, and they star Jude Law as Sam, a man who saves a young girl from a bizarre incident in the woods where she almost gets hanged, and he returns her to her home on the island of Osi, an island that's only accessible by a causeway that's only usable when the tide's out. Through a series of increasingly comic accidents, Sam finds himself unable to leave the island as the inhabitants prepare for a strange festival. He also, through a series of events that feel as if they've been deliberately engineered by the inhabitants, ends up having sex with an American lady, another outsider in this bizarre community, and he gets her pregnant. We learn over the course of these 3 episodes that Sam is a married man, and he was in the area because this place means a lot to him because his son was murdered around here several years ago, and Sam was out here as part of his personal grieving ritual, and that's where the allegorical nature of the setting becomes apparent. The island is literally Sam's grief. He has a history of erratic behaviour since the death of his son, and he's open to the outside world and his wife on an ad hoc basis, and he's shut off when that causeway's closed. He's isolated on the island and unable to leave, as in he has isolated himself in his grief and madness and is unable to let go. He gets wrapped up in the bizarre rituals of the island, which are themselves substitutes for his own rituals of grieving that have been harmful to his wife and his other children. He's incapable of escaping from the island in the same way that he's incapable of moving past his grief. The summer episodes are basically a microcosm of some of the best elements from season 1 of Lost, aka the only good season of Lost. He's seeing haunting visions of his dead son all over the island, and his son's always just out of reach. The show also gets really trippy in episode 3 as the islanders' sinister natures are revealed. Since the island represents his grief, what we're seeing here are abstract illustrations of how Sam is allowing that grief to consume him, trap him, and leave him with no option but to succumb to the islanders' wishes and abandon all hope of ever leaving. Summer is this really nice establishment of the theme, the island's status as an allegorical hellscape, and how all this relates to its character. But I feel this is much more effective in the last 3 episodes, Winter, where we flip the perspective. So Sam has been missing for a year, and his wife has a lead on his whereabouts that leads her to the island. She starts out by lying to her daughters, saying it's just a day out that she's booked on a whim, a nice little birthday surprise, while she's actually got ulterior motives of finding Sam. Since the island is a metaphor for Sam's grief, that enhances the resistance that she encounters when she reaches it. She's turned away from a cottage that she's booked seemingly for no reason at all. Everywhere she looks for them to stay, she runs into dead ends. The locals are all either hostile or unhelpful, and she's made extra vulnerable by the fact she has her daughters with her, and she has to protect them from this strange and sinister community. She even has a breakdown at one point. What seems like a simple story of a family vacation gone wrong is made to feel truly dangerous. You really feel for Helen as she fights through every obstacle that's put in her way. You're willing her to turn back at every point. You want her to realise that it's just not worth it, and she has 2 kids to protect. They're way more important than Sam or the money she's after, but she just can't stop trying to get through it, even though it's damaging herself and putting her kids in mortal danger. And one of her kids is succumbing to the island's insidious influence herself. herself. This isn't just a story of an outsider entering an unsettling community that she doesn't understand. It's a story of a woman trying to rescue herself and her daughters from the clutches of all-consuming grief, while her husband, who's already lost to grief, is trying to convince his family to submit to it. So yeah, in short, The Third Day uses the familiar folk horror out-of-place-in cult community framework to tell an effective family fragmentation character drama. I had a lot of fun with it and I do recommend it. In spite of that though, summer and winter are not the reasons that anyone is going to remember The Third Day in years to come. No, the reason that people are going to remember The Third Day in years to come is that there's an episode of it that's literally 12 hours long. So, the autumn episode was a 12-hour-long live episode streamed over the show's Facebook page. Basically, the team behind it set a camera trundling about the island over the course of an entire day as the villagers prepare for the festival and the rituals meant to mark the passing of children into adulthood and to ensure that Sam is fit to be the island's new leader. The autumn episode is meant to be an experience of immersive theatre, and it works in the capacity of giving the viewer the full, uncut OC Island experience. It's all done in one take. The camera just drifts around the island and everyone stays in character the entire time as they set everything up. While yes, this can get tedious, and no, I only watched the edited 90-minute highlight version, which in itself can get tedious, I do kind of see the artistic point of all this. The autumn episode is designed to shatter the barrier between fiction and reality. We're sat watching Jude Law in character as Sam being put through these trials where he's literally made to dig a hole for 2 hours, he's kicked, stripped and made to stand up there on that pole out there in the sea. There's something about the unbroken nature of the piece that makes it all the more disturbing because there's a point where this exercise stops being a work of fiction and starts becoming something that is literally being done to Jude Law personally. Of course, we do know that nothing untoward is going to go down. This is a television production, of course. But given the show's framework of a sinister, small, cult-like island community set to an incredible series of creeping drones, even if you're just watching the 90-minute edit, it's about as real as a horror experience can possibly get. The degree to which the viewer is made to feel uncomfortable is such a violent one, and I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like this when watching a work of horror before. Anyway, in conclusion, The Third Day is incredibly interesting, but it won't be for everyone. If you're not rolling your eyes at just how familiar its story is, then you'll probably be thinking that it's not only vanished up its own arse once, but that it's stuck in a continuous vortex where it vanishes up arses in a loop for all eternity. And while yes, both of those things are true, I personally think that... Sorry, is anyone else kind of hypnotised by this? Just look at it go there. God, I can't look away. It's... Just look at it. Just something about this makes me want to watch it for 12 hours straight, and